especially when the market's starting to pop off. And it's like, okay, get your face out of the screens, go into nature, and experience reality, okay? Because all this is all illusion. We know this, right? The pain is illusion, but also the gains are an illusion too. Just don't forget that. Okay, so what's going on with Bitcoin? Well, looks like it's getting some pressure here at this moving average. Kind of makes sense, right? Long term, though, Bitcoin is in an uptrend. That's all that matters. And today I kind of want to focus more on the macro picture and then talk about what I might be buying if we see some buying opportunities emerge here, which I think is possible because we're looking at weekly candles here and you're starting to see some downward pressure on the weekly chart. That would make sense that maybe Bitcoin is going to stall out, maybe drop back a little bit, and I'll talk about what I'd be buying in that scenario. But before that, I want to look at the macro picture because look at this freaking stock market thing. What's going on here? You literally pierced the 786. No coincidence you stopped at the 786 and that's where the weekly candle closed. So it's like, is this a setup for what's going to happen this week with the Federal Reserve? Federal Reserve coming out this week, right? I think people are suspecting they're going to raise, I think, right, by 25 basis points. I think that's sort of the expectation, right? So is that going to cause some downward pressure for all the people who don't understand how interest rates work? Probably. But it would be the most obvious buying opportunity ever, right? Because of everything we've talked about with regards to interest rates and how they actually affect the market. So let's kind of review the interest rate schematic here, okay? Because that's what's interesting, okay? Because now it's become clear, right? My favorite chart, always referring back to the favorite overlay here. It's starting to become clear why markets rise in increasing interest rate environments, okay? I'm going to try to explain this because it's actually become very clear in my own mind. All we knew before was that markets rise when interest rates rise. That's all we knew, right? That's why I've been optimistic through this whole dip because interest rates are rising. And also this dip, very, very similar to this dip here in 2015, it started at the beginning of an interest rate rising cycle. So in a macro sense, it's that same idea where people who don't understand what interest rates do, they typically panic in an environment where interest rates are increasing. So you often see these pullbacks right at the beginning of the interest rate rising cycle, just like in 2015, just like in 2022, right? You see a major pullback at the start of an interest rate rising cycle. But then what happens? Rates rise, the market goes ballistic, right? That's what we saw coming out of 2015. So why is this the case? So here's the explanation that I'll offer here. It's because interest rates are a reaction by the Fed, okay? The Fed is reacting to the supply and demand dynamics here. So why is price rising? It's rising because demand is outpacing supply. Very, very simple, right? Demand outpacing supply. So that's inflationary, right? So then the Fed must act to cool off inflation the best they can by raising interest rates to cool off demand. So if you understand that the Fed is reacting to an increased demand, which is causing prices to rise, then you realize that interest rates only go so far. Demand can continue to rise if interest rates continue to rise, and that's historically exactly what's happened, right? In 2015 all the way to 2020, that's exactly what happened. Demand continued to outpace supply even though interest rates were rising. Right? So that's kind of the same exact thing we see here, right? Demand continues to outpace supply even though interest rates are rising. So in the words of Jerome Powell, their tools are blunt, right? They have blunt tools. These are not precision instruments, okay? The raising of interest rates doesn't guarantee that demand is going to cool off, right? That's the important thing. So when you combine that with the most money printing that we've ever had in history during this March 2020 period, does it seem likely that interest rates rising will slow down demand? No, that doesn't seem likely because over the past 20 years, interest rates rising haven't even cooled off demand significantly, right? It was some deflationary event. Like in 2008, it's the housing crisis, everyone losing equity in their homes. That cooled off demand. In 2020, it's the pandemic, everyone losing their jobs. That cooled off demand. Did interest rates cool off demand? No, demand actually continued to surge while interest rates continue to rise. So think about that. Am I making sense to you? I'm making complete sense to myself. Everything makes sense right now. The thing you got to remember is that it's not interest rates that cool off demand. It's some kind of crisis or deflationary event, right? Like people losing their jobs, people losing equity in their homes, right? Interest rates rising into these environments because demand continues to surge, which is very common. Demand typically surges till the last absolute second, and then a freaking crisis hits, right? So the Fed, this is where it gets really weird with the whole 2020 thing. Why did interest rates start falling before the pandemic? That's where the conspiracy tinfoil hat is like, did they know? It's like, yeah, they knew, right? This is old news, right? Of course they knew. This was the plandemic, right? They knew this. But it's just interesting to see this on the chart where they started lowering interest rates the interest rates went flat in February of 2019, right? Market has the classic blow off top because everyone thinks money is cheap again, right? They go long the market because, money is cheap, we're going long. But then you have, the huge deflationary event that follows after interest rates already started to fall. So that goes back to the same thing I've been talking about since the beginning of the White Knuckle Report is when you start to see the rate of interest rates decreasing, its velocity to the upside, that's giving you some kind of clue that there might be some kind of major deflationary event around the bend here, right? In the same way that you had that exact same scenario in 2019 into 2020, interest rates go flat, right? They start to turn the corner and we can expect the crisis. Exact same thing leading into 2008 financial crisis. Interest rates go flat in 2006, right? They start to come down. Market peaks up a little higher, literally sets a new all-time high after interest rates come down, and then the crisis hits. We have to kind of have that same expectation here, right? So interest rates are no longer shooting in a straight line to the upside. They're starting to roll over. Market's starting to get frothy, potentially about to go to new all-time highs, likely to go to new all-time highs at this point. But all of that it's kind of the same exact cycle that we saw 2019 to 2020 and 2006 into 2008. It's the same kind of setup. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that the market is potentially entering the final phase of a blow-off top scenario, and that's perfectly aligned with the interest rate cycle that we see right now. So that's the macro picture. Keep that in mind. I'm talking about upside. I'm talking about we're likely to see upside in this market probably for the rest of the year. Maybe it ends abruptly in some kind of October crisis. I've been getting some intuitions, pure intuitions, not based on anything technical, but pure intuitions that maybe the moves we're seeing right now are going to come to an abrupt end in October. I don't know why I think that's possible. I'm just considering that as a possibility. But I also consider that the markets could roar well into 2024, right? Because the idea is that, everyone's on their best behavior for the election, right? The incumbents want to keep the economy looking good. What does that really mean? Keep the stock market high, even though that's inflation, right? It's like, how are they saying they're fighting inflation when they also want the stock market to rise? It's like, you realize the stock market rising is inflation, okay? That's the same thing. There's no difference between inflation and stock market rising. It's all due to currency debasement, okay? So anyway, that's one reason why you might expect the market to continue to rise into 2024 to set up a favorable environment for the incumbents who seek to be reelected in 2024. So that's just something I keep in mind. Potential October 2023 crisis, but also maybe the markets roar well into 2024 and we don't see a crisis until 2025. That's actually very possible. That would be similar to the 2006 to 2008 setup. So keep that in mind. Okay. That's the macro picture. I'm talking about upside. I'm talking about looking for buying opportunities. And here's what I'm talking about buying, okay? Let's talk about supply and demand, okay? Everyone's talking about XRP. But this is what really matters when you're looking at cryptos, okay? It's supply and demand. Everything is supply and demand if I haven't made that clear, okay? That's the only thing that really matters. Okay, so look at XRP right here. The circulating supply of XRP is 52 billion. The max supply is 100 billion. That ratio is not great. compared to other cryptocurrencies available on this market. Why? I'm saying because you could literally have more supply dumped on this market, putting downward pressure on XRP if only half of the total supply is represented by the circulating supply. So to me, that's not great. Yes, I own XRP, but it's not one of the ones I'm actively accumulating for this reason. Now, let me show you what I am actively accumulating based on these exact supply and demand dynamics. Look at this one. This might surprise you. This, dude, look at this. Gold, kid, right? This is, you want to accumulate this aggressively, right? No supply can be dumped on the market at this point. Yes, people can sell it. That can put downward pressure. But I'm saying that the total supply and the circulating supply being matched up is an excellent situation for price to rise here, right? So that's one. REN, don't forget it. Same thing. Look at SNX. I'm going to show you all the ones that make a lot of sense in terms of their supply and demand dynamics. Look at SNX. Max supply, 321 million. Circulating supply is 99% of that, right? More than 99% of that. That's a good situation, right? This is the kind of thing you want to accumulate. Another one is the same ones I've been talking about forever, but now I'm just showing you the supply and demand dynamics, right? Look at bond. Look at this, dude. Max supply 10 million. You're almost at 10 million, right? So these are good situations, right? That's a good ratio. That's setting price up to launch ballistically, okay? And Litecoin too. It's another one. Litecoin's another one I'm aggressively accumulating at any chance that I get, right? So look at this. It's not as good of a ratio as those other ones we just looked at, but considering it's literally Litecoin, it's like, okay, that's pretty good, you know? Because, I mean, Litecoin is like, it's kind of the sleeping master, kind of, right? It's kind of a really important one. If you look in the fundamentals of Litecoin, you see it's more decentralized than Bitcoin, right? It's almost like the better version of Bitcoin in a way. So when I look at these, right, I see you're almost at the max supply right here at 73 million Litecoins. I'm like, yeah, I feel pretty comfortable accumulating a lot of Litecoin even at these prices, right? Which, you know, these aren't particularly low prices for Litecoin. I was buying it at $40 2 years ago. So it's like, okay. But at the same time, I'm like, if there is to be some kind of macro bull market, and when I say macro, I mean anywhere between 3 months and 12 months out, if there's to be any kind of bull run in that time, I would expect Litecoin to do very, very well in that time, even considering that the supply and demand dynamics aren't as great as something like REN or SNX, but it's Litecoin, you know what I mean? So, like, that's a good one. But here's the thing. I'm just saying you got to look at the supply and demand. This is really what's important here. You got to look at the circulating supply against the max supply, and you got to see if that's a good ratio. If the max supply is way higher than the circulating supply, that's an obvious thing that's going to put downward pressure on price. And for me, that doesn't make a good investment scenario. So that's why it's like when I look at XRP, I'm like, there's a lot of hype with XRP, right? The trade on XRP is all about hype, but supply and demand, not great, right? So you're losing potential upside on XRP as more of the total supply gets introduced into the circulating supply. So yes, maybe it's going to do a 10x, right? Maybe it's going to do a 12x. But then then you look at something like SNX or Bond or REN, and you're like, okay, that's going to do like a 50 freaking x, right? Just literally because supply is way beneath demand, especially if we have any kind of bull market, right? And here's the last thing I'll show you, and that's pretty much all I need to show you for this week's edition of White Knuckle, is look at Ethereum, okay? So Ethereum is interesting because the circulating supply is at the current total supply, but here's a problem. Max supply is infinite, right? There's a lot of coins like this. You know, Band Protocol is the same thing. You have infinite max supply here. That is something I don't love. I don't love that. Even though, yes, we had the triple halving of Ethereum and the supply of Ethereum is being reduced. The point is, at some point down the road, the supply of Ethereum may increase significantly. And maybe demand will still outpace that supply. That's possible, but it's not something I can be certain about versus like with REN or SNX or Bond or TRB. I didn't say TRB, but TRB is another one. Look at the supply demand dynamics on TRB. And also consider Bond and TRB. Look at this, right? Look at that. It's almost at the total supply. Circulating supply is almost at the total supply on TRB, right? And consider both bond and TRB. These are my I love these coins, right? These are my moonshot, huge bags of these things. Like, these things will make me a multimillionaire. Look at the rank on TRB. The market cap rank, 555 on TRB. Think about what has to happen for TRB to get into the top 100 coins. It will literally go like 100x, like literally, to get into the top 100. And I'm betting that it probably will get into the top 100 because of its utility, because it's a valuable, decentralized oracle, and it's more decentralized than Chainlink. It's more decentralized than Band Protocol. And there's just not that many low market cap oracle coins on the market. So TRB is just an obvious one for me. And then obviously the supply and demand dynamics just reinforce that. So that's what I got for you. You guys need to be looking at your circulating supplies against your total supply and max supply, and that should be informing your decisions. And it also kind of tells you the hype around XRP, it might just be hype, right? I mean, I'm still holding, but I'm just saying that that's not one that gets me really excited in terms of its ability to rocket to the upside, because a lot of supply can be dumped on the market because the circulating supply is only half of the max supply versus something like TRB or bond, where the circulating supply is like 99% of the total supply. But that also points out that we're at a very, very interesting time in this market here, where a lot of coins like REN, SNX, Uniswap, I didn't show. There's so many I didn't show. Anchor, a lot of these coins, they are all at their max supply, as in their circulating supply is between 95 and 99% of their max supply. That is a unique moment in crypto history, okay? That is kind of the thing under the hood that's telling you that a big bull market is emerging. Whether that happens very quickly or whether that happens over a longer period of time, the fact that a lot of these important coins like Uniswap, SNX, Litecoin, these coins are bumping up against their max supply. What does that tell you? If you know anything about supply and demand, it tells you that the mother of all bull runs hasn't even happened yet, dude. That's what happens. That's what it means, okay? You understand? All right? So maybe there's some downward moves coming. I mean, it would make sense. This market is rising epically, and we have the Federal Reserve meeting. That could set up a pullback. I'm telling you, if that sets up any kind of pullback, like, you realize, like, I'm buying with both hands. Like, holy crap. And I've been buying, right? But now we're looking for that. It's like, it's like, look at XLM or something. Just any of these coins that have kind of popped off, right? You're looking at this situation and realizing, like, okay, we want some kind of pullback in here. These coins have already moved well off their lows, right? They've potentially established an uptrend here. So the next thing we want to look for is some kind of pullback, and it makes sense that we might get one, especially because you can see that Bitcoin is definitely struggling here. So it might have to regroup a little lower, potentially, or not. Literally or not, because you could also look at this and be like, oh, that's just a bull flag, consolidation before move higher, which is exactly what's been going on since October of 2022. You just have consolidation, pop higher, consolidation, pop higher, consolidation, pop higher. That could be exactly what's going on here. So either we're going to get a little bit more pullback and a little bit more time to buy, or we're not, and this thing's just going to go, right? So that's what I got for you. Think about supply and demand. Think about interest rates. Now it starts to make sense why on the White Knuckle Report we were talking about this. We were ahead of the curve on what interest rates actually do long before anyone's talking about this, and now it should make complete sense to you. So comment on this video and tell me how much more enlightened you are by following the White Knuckle Report for the past, 107 weeks or something like that. So that's what I got for you. God!